So I was standing at the office thinking to myself, what's important here? What can I do? And then it hit me like a brick. I thought, what are the main reasons that these families get involved with DHR? And that led me to thinking another question. Well, what have I seen? And I could think of three main things: substance abuse, domestic violence, and child neglect. So I started working on my lit review, just researching, reading article after article, just looking at how substance abuse and domestic violence are, substance abuse and child neglect, and even domestic abuse and child neglect. And I thought, how are these related? The answer was a little bit more shocking than I expected. In Alabama, the illicit drug use minus marijuana is higher than the national average. Parental drug use places children at increased risk for domestic violence, child neglect, and many other issues. Engaging in substance abuse is a risk factor for domestic violence, and experiencing domestic violence is a risk factor for substance abuse. Substance abuse and child neglect co-occur in over 60% of child protective cases. Domestic violence accounts for 14% of Alabama's violent offenses. Domestic simple assaults count for 39% of all simple assaults. This number has been increasing since 2006. Domestic violence and child neglect are concurrent issues, and intimate partner violence is a risk factor for child neglect. In Minnesota, even exposure to domestic violence is considered a form of child neglect. In the United States, 78.3% of cases of child abuse were attributed to neglect in 2012. In Alabama, they represented 38.2%. The number of neglected children has been rising since 2008. So I started pouring through case files, and I was looking at TFC cases and continuum cases from this year all the way back until 2012 using random assignment. And this is a graph of what I found. I took all of the reasons using the psych evals, the referral sheets, and made this graph. I'll go into it in a moment. The number one cause of referral for continuing cases was substance abuse of non-alcoholic drugs. For TFC cases, it was the problematic behavior of the children. The second leading cause of referrals for both continuing cases and TFC cases, domestic violence was the second highest reason. And thirdly, for continuing cases, child neglect and the psychological health of the caregiver were tied at 16 out of 30. For TFC cases, the psychological health of the caregiver was the third reason for referral. For continuing cases, 21 of the domestic violence incidents co-occurred with some form of substance abuse. There were 0 cases of domestic violence without it. For TFC, 8 out of 12 domestic violence incidents co-occurred with substance abuse. In continuing cases, 13 out of 15 instances of child neglect included substance abuse. In TFC cases, every single case of child neglect involved substance abuse. So, why is this important? It's important for the children. They deserve to live in a safe, happy home, to have a loving family who knows how to take care of them. They should be able to focus on learning instead of wondering, am I going to get hurt tonight? We want our kids to be happy. So what can we do about this? Well, this presentation is one of the things we can do. That's what I'm doing. But another thing you can do is advocate. Advocate for funding for substance prevention programs and domestic violence shelters. You can educate. Teach people about the warning signs of abuse and neglect, and teach caseworkers better interventions for concurrent issues. In legislature, focus on restorative justice policies as opposed to distributive justice policies. And here's my works cited. Thank you, everyone.